Hey guys, welcome to Pistons Talk Podcast. Hope you guys are having a great night. In today's episode, what we're going to be doing is reacting to Trajan Langdon's press conference that he did have today with the available Detroit Pistons media. They asked him a variety of questions from trades, free agency, NBA draft, and much more. So, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be playing some audio from that press conference today and just reacting to it and giving you guys my overall thoughts and opinions on these questions. So, one of the first questions that was asked was the Desmond Bane trade. And this is what Trajan had to say about the Desmond Bane trade and could he see the Detroit Pistons making a similar type move to improve the roster?
The Orlando trade for them to get Bane, I'm sure that caught everyone's attention in the East. Did you get the sense that with the Tatum injury and then since that happened, the Halliburton injury, now that maybe your peers around the conference are a little more open to pushing some chips in than they would have been had those things not happened?
Yeah, I think so. I think, again, we definitely are doing our due diligence and thinking about different opportunities, but we also don't want it to impact us going forward either. I think I thought it was a great move by Orlando to get Bane. I think he is going to help them out. They're going to be a really good team. We'll look for those opportunities. And again, if it's a player coming back that adds value and it's not too expensive and it doesn't hamper our ability to have optionality going forward or hamper the development internally of our players, we'll look to do it.
One of the things that really stood out to me in that question that he was asked with trying to make a trade like that is they're looking at different opportunities and options. And I think that's huge for a GM to be open, saying like, hey, there are different opportunities and avenues that you can build a team. And that's the way I took it, because I don't think there is just a right or wrong way to build an NBA team. I think you saw it in the NBA finals, like a team like the Pacers, they did it a lot through trade and free agency. And a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder, they did it through a couple different ways. They did it through trades, like acquiring SGA. They did it through the draft and, savvy free agent moves. Like there's a lot of different ways you can build a good basketball team. And him saying like, we'll look at opportunities if it makes sense. And if it doesn't mess up internally what we have going, then they'll look at those opportunities. So that's what I took away from the Desmond Bane question. I don't think the Pistons are in the position right now to trade for first, two players in a pick swap for a quote unquote third option, because that's what he's going to be in Orlando next to Paulo Banchero and Franz Wagner. But I think there will be an opportunity for the Detroit Pistons to upgrade this roster this year and get better and kind of keep pace in the Eastern Conference. So the second question we're going to get into, you guys, was Trajan was asked about the East being quote unquote wide open. I've heard so many people say the East is wide open, let's make a move now. This was his thoughts on that question asked by the media.
Trajan, when you spoke to us after the season, you said that the success of the team might have altered the plan, it might have accelerated where you guys are. Yeah. Now with the unfortunate injuries in the conference, a lot of people think the East is wide open. Has that even changed or maybe escalated some of the things you might do in the next few weeks?
I think it's definitely provoked some thought internally in terms of what we can do to get better. I think it hasn't changed the roadmap for us. I don't think we're in a place to push all of our chips in and be locked into a place who still want to keep that optionality. I think our guys have been in the gym working a lot. They want to get better. So I think we will see growth from our young players from this year to next year. And I think that's ultimately what's really important for us, because if those guys get better, we'll ultimately get better. And there'll be a time. But again, we're continuing to keep our ear to the ground and see if there's opportunities to get better without pushing all of our chips in, proverbially.
So there's a lot to get into with that questions about the East being wide open. I think there's a couple of things. Trajan said that it hasn't really changed the Pistons' plan. Now, Trajan has a plan. We just don't know what the hell it is. And I think that's what makes it so fun about, doing a podcast every week with you guys. talking about what we think the Pistons should do, what are the long-term plans, because we have no idea. Trajan has a roadmap of what he wants the Detroit Pistons to do in the long term. I don't even know what stage we're in. I'd be like really curious to interview him if I ever have the opportunity to, because he seems like a really good interview. But he did say it hasn't changed the plans. He also said that the Pistons want to get better internally. What does that mean? He's looking at guys like Cade Cunningham, your franchise player. He wants Cade to continue to get better. He wants Jaden Ivey to continue to get better. He wants Ausar to get better. Ron Holland, you guys kind of get it. Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart. This is a very young team, you guys. There are 8 guys on this roster under the age of 25 years old. So Trajan wants this team to internally get better. And he said during this press conference is like, if we develop internally, then we get better. And that's 100% factual. If these guys take a step like they did under Coach JB Bickerstaff, and you truly believe JB Bickerstaff can develop and squeeze the most out of these guys, out of their potential, and keep growing as basketball players, and then you should bank on internal or organic growth. If you're the Detroit Pistons and a Detroit Piston fan listening to this, I thought what JB did this season was incredible. You saw leaps from a lot of different players and his coaching staff. And he also said that they aren't really looking to push all their chips, on the table for a big move, which I saw a lot of Pistons fans on Twitter, man. They were just kind of just losing their shit. And I get it. It's offseason, June 24th, as we're recording this podcast. The type of season Cade Cunningham had, all NBA, he was phenomenal. I think a lot of Pistons fans really want to get Cade that secondary help, get him a number 2 option, a consistent number 2 option. Is the conversations that I've had with, multiple fans, across Twitter, across social media. And I get the talking point, but I think those conversations are easier said than done. Like I saw a comment today saying, go get Miles Turner. It's like, yeah, Miles Turner would fit like a glove on this team, but the process of getting Miles Turner is easier said than done. You'd have to move some pieces, have to move some salary to even have the cap space to sign Miles Turner. And like, you kind of have to ask yourself, is it really worth it in the long term? So Trajan's comments about not wanting to push all the chips, and what he means by chips is the young players on the table to make a splash. I think it tells you a lot of like what the Detroit Pistons plan is long term for this basketball team. Now, the third question we're going to get into was more of a long-term future outlook about like what Trajan and Tom Gores have talked about. So this is what Trajan had to say when asked about the Pistons' future.
When I've talked to Tom about the future, I think we've kind of stayed right now, and he knows what's coming. But I think right now let's focus on what's coming for this summer and next year. And we haven't really looked upon any huge financial commitments out of what's already on the books, or that we see could be coming with retaining our own free agents. Again, we're not going to be super aggressive this summer. I don't foresee any of that. And again, it's just developing from within and hoping to keep a couple vet pieces that we had on the roster this past year. And if we can add around the margins to get better, we will, but I don't think it's anything that's going to be super aggressive or crazy. And I think we're on the same page with that line of thinking.
So there's a lot to dissect with what he said in that little 50-second clip. I think the first thing is he said, let's focus on the summer and next year. Now, I think he's just talking about like, let's focus on developing these guys, letting them, get better in areas. He talked about self-creation a couple of times with multiple young guys on this team. Kind of talked about like next year. I mean, next year, we've talked about free agents this year in 25. If you guys want to kind of like take a little peek at the 2026 free agency class, it's a lot better. There's a lot more players, I think, that are, more entertaining for us to possibly have conversations about. Do the Pistons want to be players in the 2026 free agency class? I'd like to assume so. But, we're going to have to wait and see like what kind of happens in terms of just like cap space and how this team is constructed and how much cap space it could possibly have. That's kind of how I took it with the, looking into next year. Or maybe it's a different kind of outlook of, oh, let's look where this team is next year in terms of, do they make the playoffs? How far do they go? Do they win a playoff series? I think that's a whole nother avenue you could go down in terms of next year. He also talked about haven't looked at any huge financial commitments outside the roster. Now, if you look at the Pistons roster, Cade is going to be in a rookie supermax. It's about $40 million going into next season. Then you have Tobias on 1 year of a $26 million expiring deal. Then you have guys like Isaiah Stewart only making $15 million. And then Simone Fonseca's on the final year of an $8 million deal. So the Pistons have players on their roster that are on rookie deals. And then you have guys that have been extended, like Cade Cunningham and Isaiah Stewart, and expiring deals, expiring veterans like Tobias and Simone. So I think that's something to kind of, pay attention to. He kind of pointed out, like, we haven't really looked at any long-term financial, what was the word he said? Commitments, I guess, outside of their roster. That's exactly what he said. So that is very telling by Trajan Langdon. And he also said he doesn't think they're going to be super aggressive this summer. He doesn't really believe that that's the case. And I think that's where a lot of Pistons fans got upset and just kind of crossed their arms, because they feel like the East is wide open and they should be aggressive. They should put their, chips on the table and, try to make a move. But, I think Trajan still wants to upgrade the roster. He just doesn't want to upgrade the roster in a way where maybe you're, trading 2-3 young guys for a all-star or a superstar, and maybe your window is a little bit tighter in terms of years of competing. Like, I think where they're at right now, without even before the draft and free agency, I mean, you can kind of talk about like the core, them developing and being young, but you have to pay all these guys in the long term. But I think Trajan still wants to see and see what JB can do from a development standpoint of how much more these guys can, grow internally and get better. So not, kind of being super aggressive this summer, I think is the right move if you're looking for long-term success. If you're just a fan where you look at the Pistons, they were a 6 seed, and you want to try to get up to that top 4 seed and be aggressive and put your chips in, you can have that conversation. And I understand it. I honestly do. I understand fans that want to be aggressive. They don't want the Magic to leapfrog them. Boston's going to have a down year, even though they did add Anthony Simons. Indiana's probably going to have a down year because they don't have Tyrese Halliburton, but never know. They might be in the market for Drew Holiday. Who knows if he actually even stays in Portland? Maybe they can kind of work a deal out that way, even though he's on a really expensive deal. Who knows what Indiana's going to do? Because I don't think they're going to stand pat. I don't think they're going to roll TJ McConnell, Andrew Nebhart as their guards. I just don't. I think they might go after maybe a guy like a Drew Holiday. His contract is kind of expensive. Maybe they kind of target Dennis Schroeder. Who knows? I would hate to see that, but I think Indiana will definitely go for a point guard for a year until Hallie is good to come back the following season. But I mean, when you kind of look at it that way, I think it's definitely something that I think fans are going to be, very vocal on, and I get it. Also talked about, add around the margins to get better. Like, if you can get marginally better at a backup power forward, like if you replace Simone with, let's just say, a Jake LaRavia, for example, I think that's an upgrade. That's adding on the margins. So I think the Pistons will get better this offseason, you guys. I don't think they're just going to fully run it back with Tim and Dennis and Malik and whatever draft pick we get at 37 if we keep the pick. But I do think marginally you can get better at backup power forward. You can get better at maybe you need a third string center, try to replace Paul Reed. You can get marginally better if maybe Dennis doesn't want to come back or there's a team that's really aggressive for him. Maybe you can get marginally better of, getting a backup point guard. That's the way I took out of this question that was asked, kind of talking about like, the East or the conversation with Trajan Langdon and the conversation with Tom. I rambled there for a little bit, but there was a lot to get into. The fourth question that he was asked is, what would a successful season entail for the Detroit Pistons? And this is what Trajan had to say.
For success as it relates to the draft and free agency this offseason?
I think for us is continue to get better and continue to have optionality. As I said, we'll keep our ear to the ground on ways that we can improve. But improvement for us is more internal. I think if we can keep some of the guys that we had as part of this run, some of the vets, that would be great. We know they're going to get interest from other teams as well. So as we look to keep them, we'll also have to have backup options as well if they choose to go somewhere else for a deal that we can't match, or a deal that we can't get to. So we'd like to get those guys back, but we'll be prepared to have to go in another direction if need be.
It's kind of just similar to the last question that was asked, but he did mention the vets. He talked about trying to retain the vets if he can, but have a backup plan just in case, the vets like, Tim, Malik, and Dennis sign with other teams, which I think is important. So he does have a plan B just in case that does happen. He also talked about having, eyes on the ground, just in case to make, room for improvement, having eyes on the ground for rooms of improvement, which kind of touched on that at the beginning of the podcast. Like, I don't think Trajan is just the type of, president that's just kind of saying like, hey, got Cade, got Ivy, we can just run it back, we'll be fine. If there's a move to be made to improve the roster, he's going to make that move. So we're going to get into the draft. And Trajan was asked about the draft in NAL, and this is his comments about those two.
Trajan, what's the skill set you look for at pick 37?
Ooh, best player. Yeah, I mean, we have our qualities that we're looking for. Obviously, high character, hardworking, and competitive. Size for position is important, I think, is throughout the league. But as we've kind of looked at that pick, there's a lot of wings that are intriguing. There's some bigs that are intriguing, and there's some guards that can shoot the ball that are intriguing as well. So we're trying to figure out who's going to be there, but I think we'll find a player that we like at that number.
How has NIL changed that prospect pool that's there late first, early second?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's really changed it this year. We had a couple guys in early that went back to school that I think were probably 25 to 45, and there's a couple others that were even higher on draft boards. So you take four to six guys out at a range like ours, it can affect the draft that maybe it falls off talent-wise 32, 33 that would have fallen off 38, 39. So it can change the level of prospect that'll be there at pick 37, and that's kind of what we're seeing. But again, I do think we'll find a player that we like if we're still at 37.
So there's a lot to kind of get into with the NBA draft. I think the first thing he said is he'll look for best available. I think that should always kind of be your mindset when you're looking to add a prospect in the NBA draft. He also talked about having high character, hardworking, competitive. I think that's always kind of been what the Detroit Pistons look for, not just from a draft perspective, but a front office perspective and just bringing in guys that way. Talked about a lot of wings, bigs, and guards that can shoot the ball. That was kind of telling. There are, guards in this draft, Tyrese Proctor, Jazz Lanier, they can't shoot the ball. Maybe those are options for the Pistons. Who knows? Also mentioned if they keep the pick. So that has me thinking, are you going to trade up? Is there a prospect that you really like? Or are you just going to trade out of it completely and maybe try to, marginally upgrade your roster that way? So there was a lot to kind of just dissect with his comments about the NBA draft. I still don't know what they're going to do, you guys. If it was up to me, I'm probably just taking best player available in that situation. Really depends how the draft board goes. I mean, if there's a chance that, Ryan Kalkbrenner or Maxine Renault are still there, like around 28 or 29, I'm calling just to see what it would take to get up to those picks and, try to get a trade to get one of those centers. But I mean, if they're gone, then I'd probably just roll the dice and just draft whatever prospect I can get at 37. But that's just my opinion. I don't know what you guys think, on the draft as a whole. But we're going to transition over to Trajan, and he was talking about Ausar Thompson and what he's working on this summer in terms of, getting better and developing.
Ausar, and this kind of being his first real offseason since he didn't really get to last offseason. Where are you looking to see him grow the most, and how do you think he can possibly raise the ceiling of this team?
AT's been working his butt off too. He's been here. He's been back home. He's been in the gym. The thing that he wants to do at some point is be Defensive Player of the Year. So working on his strength that he didn't get to do last year, getting in better shape, working on his different abilities to get shots, to create shots, putting him in pick and roll. But I think AT has got an ability in different places on the floor to be able to just create a shot. So that's what we're really trying to work with him on this summer: the ball handling, the shot creation, and then just getting stronger. That's one thing that he couldn't do all last summer because of the restrictions. So having him in the weight room, movement efficiency. So when he is getting in those situations, he can be a little bit more on balance in terms of getting a shot or finishing at the rim. But he's excited. We're excited for him to have an entire summer to develop, not only on the floor, but also in the weight room.
So there's a couple of things that I really liked what Trajan said. Working on his strength, obviously having blood clots last year was really limited of what he could do. Shot creation and pick and roll. I think the shot creation thing is really interesting. I think a lot of us, when we think of Ausar, like what he can develop, we automatically think 3-point shot. We need Ausar to work on his 3-point shot. I could argue like Ausar getting better at handling the basketball and working on shot creation, I think could be just as important as developing a 3-point shot. I think it really could. Maybe that's just me, but I think if Ausar had a go-to move, where he can just score on anybody, I think that's so much more valuable than possibly working on a 3-point shot. Call me crazy, but I found that really interesting, like the shot creation, the ball handling, and obviously he is still working on his 3-point shooting with Fred Vincent, but the shot creation and the ball handling, I think could be really interesting to see how much he does develop this summer and how much he did actually work on it to get better. But that's just my opinion. You guys may think Ausar just needs to take like 1,000 threes a day and just be like a 40% 3-point shooter. I get it. I really get it with him and Ron. I honestly think Fred can really, help them develop in that way in terms of just becoming better shooters. But really intrigued with just the ball handling and the self creation. Now, Trajan was asked about Ron Holland, and he did mention Bobby Klitman in Summer League. So this is what he kind of had to say about that.
Yeah, he's getting better. I'm excited for him for this Summer League. We're really focusing on this Summer League being about he and Bobby, giving them the opportunities to really show what they can do on both ends of the floor and lead the Summer League team and be competitive around it. But those are two guys that have versatility on both ends of the floor to handle, to score it. Both been working on their shot and shot creation as well, along with getting stronger, which is very, very important for two guys that are young in this league. So they'll have that opportunity in Summer League, and we're excited about it.
So he's talking about how Ron Holland is developing and getting better, just like Ausar, and then kind of talked about Summer League. Like Bobby Klitman and Ron Holland are confirmed to be on the Summer League roster, and I think we kind of expected that if the Pistons keep their pick or they trade up in the draft tomorrow, I expect that draft pick to join them in the Summer League as well. And the Summer League will be here before you know it, you guys. It's probably one of my favorite times of the year just to watch all these draft picks and just kind of see all these new players that are entering the NBA. I also talked about them leading the Summer League team and both working on their shots and shot creation. You mentioned shot creation a couple of times with Ausar. You mentioned it with Bobby, and he mentioned it with Ron. I think Bobby, to me, I'm really intrigued to see if he gained more weight, if he's been in the weight room, because the one thing about Bobby, like I don't really think Bobby has a flaw to his game. He does everything pretty well, in my opinion. Just with him, it's just adding more strength. I think could really help him in the long term, and maybe he's in the rotation next year. Not really sure like where that would really like put him. Is it like a backup power forward? Maybe he kind of threatens to take some Monte Fontecchio minutes. I'm not entirely sure. Gonna have to wait and see how he does look in the summer league and what the Pistons do in free agency. Now we got one more clip to play from Trajan Langdon, and Omari actually asked Trajan about the contract extensions with Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren. And this is what he kind of had to say. And I found it really interesting.
With Ivey and Duren, obviously, restricted free agency. We'll have to see how that goes. But I guess what's the maybe line you have to figure out there as far as valuing a guy property and guys still have growth in front of them. I guess what's the approach with those conversations and how are they going so far?
So don't jump the gun. They're not restricted free agents for another year. So I think it's, when that time comes, which is later in the summer, we'll have those conversations with the agents. But, in terms of valuing our players and contract stuff, I'm never going to talk about it. That's going to be between us and the agent. But those are guys that we value, that we talk about. So hopefully we can, have some really good conversations if it comes to that. And if not, they'll play their years out here, and then we'll see what happens going forward.
I feel like we've talked about contract extensions with Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren ad nauseum with you guys. There's a couple of things that Trajan said, though. He says, don't jump the gun. They're not restricted free agents yet. They have another year, which is true. I mean, the Pistons could go into this summer, have conversations. Maybe Duren and Ivey's agents just don't like the deals that the Pistons are offering them, and they could just go into this season coming up and just kind of have those conversations as the Pistons, or as both of those guys will be restricted free agents. I mean, look at Santi Aldama. He's going to be an RFA. And I bet you he's going to have an extremely competitive market with a lot of teams that are trying to sign him. That's the one disadvantage of actually not extending these guys, is you could have teams that could try to outbid the Detroit Pistons in terms of signing these guys to new deals. But I found it funny that Trajan said, don't jump the gun. They aren't restricted free agents yet. When the time comes, we will have those conversations, and we value those guys. I think that's important. I think Trajan, if you want to take anything away from this press conference, take away the fact that Trajan Langdon really values building this core internally and organically. Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren are very big pieces and parts to the puzzle on the Detroit Pistons, in my personal opinion. I think Jaden Ivey was just starting to figure it out. He was starting to come to his own before he did have his leg kind of dove by Cole Anthony, and his season was ended very shortly. Jalen Duren, the second half of the season, especially in the playoffs, he has started developed a little bit more. Like, he's starting to, give more effort on the defensive end. I think his passing is real. I'm really intrigued to see if, he's going to work on and develop a 12 to 15 footer to really open it up his game, and not just kind of be a rim runner and just like a, 2 to 5 foot, hook shot, or, whatever he kind of does, like around the rim. Like, he doesn't really have a game where like he's taken out and taken jump shots yet, but I'm intrigued to see like if he can. But just the takeaways with Trajan with this presser is patience. If there's a move to be made, he will make it. Who knows what happens with the NBA draft? You guys, I still don't know. If I had to guess, I think it's Chaz Lanier. If I'm right, cool. If I'm not, I'm not. But that's all I really have in today's podcast. Wanted to keep it short and sweet for you guys, and give you guys kind of a bonus episode before the draft. But hope you guys have a great night, and can't wait for the draft. Go Pistons. Peace.